Hello!
And welcome to Larry's Library.
Hello, welcome to Larry's Library. We're continuing to read Swiss Family Robinson. We've been going back and forth to the wreck of a ship to get all the stuff that's left there that they can find. And so chapter 20, The Cracker and the Pinnace. And for those who don't know, Pinnace is an ancient type of sailing, not ancient, but an old type of sailing ship. Very small, used in war sometimes. Yeah, she got a baby doll. Okay, go sit down. Chapter 20, The Cracker and the Pinnace. From the time of discovering the pinnace, my desire of returning to the vessel grew every moment more irresistible. But one thing I saw was absolutely necessary, which was to collect all my hands to get her out from the situation where we had found her. After breakfast, then, we prepared for setting out. The boys were gay and on the alert in the expectation of the pleasure that awaited them. We took with us an ample provision of boiled roots and cassava, and in addition, arms and weapons of every kind. We reached Safety Bay without any remarkable event. Here we thought it prudent to put on our cork jackets. We then scattered some food for the geese and ducks which had taken up their abode there, and soon after stepped gaily into our tub raft, at the same time fastening the new boat by a rope to her stern, so that she could be drawn along. We put out for the current, though not without considerable fear of finding that the wreck had disappeared. We soon, however, perceived that it still remained firm between the rocks. Having got on board, all repaired on the wings of curiosity and ardor to that part of the vessel called the bulkhead, which contained the enviable prize, the pinnace. Everybody say hi to Uncle Kevin. On further observation, it appeared to me that the plan we had formed was subject to at least two alarming difficulties. The one was the situation of the pinnace in the ship, and the other was the size and weight it would necessarily acquire when put together. The enclosure which contained the pinnace was in the interior of the ship, and timbers of prodigious bulk and weight separated it from the breach, and in this part of the deck there was not sufficient space for us to put the pinnace together or to give her room when done. The breach also was too narrow and too irregular to admit of her being launched from this place as we had done with our tub raft. In short, the separate pieces of the pinnace were too heavy for the possibility of our removing them even with the assistance of our united strength. What, therefore, was to be done? The cabinet which contained the pinnace was lighted by several small fissures in the timbers, which, after standing in the place a few minutes to accustom the eye, enabled one to see sufficiently to distinguish objects. I discovered with pleasure that all the pieces of which she was composed were so accurately arranged and numbered that without too much presumption I might flatter myself with the hope of being able effectually to collect and put them together. Please stop putting that beside me. If I could be allowed the necessary time and could procure a convenient place. I therefore, in spite of every disadvantage, decided on the undertaking, and we immediately set about it. We proceeded at first so slowly as to have produced discouragement if the desire of possessing so admirable a little vessel had not at every moment inspired us with new strength and ardor. We passed an entire week in this arduous undertaking. I embarked every morning with my 3 sons and returned every evening, and never without some small addition to our stores. We were now so accustomed to this manner of proceeding that my wife bade us good-bye without concern, and we, on our parts, left Tent House without anxiety. At length the pinnace was completed and in a condition to be launched. The question now was how to manage this remaining difficulty. She was an elegant little vessel, perfect in every part. She had a small, neat deck, and her masts and sails were no less exact and perfect than those of a little brig. It was probable she would sail well from the lightness of her construction, and in consequence drawing but little water. We had pitched and towed all the seams that nothing might be wanting for her complete appearance. We had even taken the pains of further embellishing by mounting her with 2 small cannon of about a pound weight, and in imitation of larger vessels had fastened them to the deck with chains. But in spite of the delight we felt in contemplating a work, as it were, of our own industry, the great difficulty still remained. The said commodious, charming little vessel still stood fast enclosed within 4 walls, nor could I conceive a mode of getting her out. To effect a passage through the outer side of the vessel by means of our united industry and the use of all the utensils we had secured seems to present a prospect of exertions beyond the reach of man, even if not attended with dangers the most alarming. We examined if it might be practicable to cut away all intervening timbers to which, from the nature of the breach, we had easier access, but should we even succeed in this attempt, the upper timbers being, in consequence of the inclined position of the ship, on a level with the water, our labor would be unavailing. Besides, we had neither strength nor time for such a proceeding. From one moment to another a storm might arise and engulf the ship, timbers, pinnace, ourselves, and all. Despairing then of being able to find means consistent with the sober rules of art, my impatient fancy inspired the thought of a project which could not, however, be tried without hazards and dangers of a tremendous nature. I had found on board a strong iron mortar, such as is used in kitchens. I took a thick oak plank and nailed it to different parts of it on some large iron hooks. With a knife I cut a groove along the middle of the plank. I sent the boys to fetch some matchwood for the hold, and I cut a piece sufficiently long to continue burning at least 2 hours. I placed this train in the groove of my plank. I filled the mortar with gunpowder, and then laid the plank thus furnished upon it, having previously pitched the mortar all round, and lastly I made the whole fast to the spot with strong chains, crossed by means of the hooks in every direction. Thus I accomplished a sort of cracker, also known as a bomb, from which I expected to effect a happy conclusion. I hung this machine of mischief to the side of the bulkhead next to the sea, having taken previous care to choose a spot in which its action could not affect the pinnace. When the whole was arranged, I set fire to the match, the end of which projected far enough beyond the plank to allow us sufficient time to escape. I now hurried on board the raft into which I had previously sent the boys before applying a light to the match, and who, though they had assisted in forming the cracker, had no suspicion of the use for which it was intended, believing all the while it concealed some subject of amusement for their next trip to the vessel. It was a bomb. It'd be amusing. On our arrival at Tent House, I immediately put the raft in a certain order that she might be in readiness to return speedily to the wreck when the noise produced by the cracker should have informed me that my scheme had taken effect. We set busily to work in emptying her, and during the occupation our ears were assailed with the noise of an explosion of such violence that my wife and the boys, who were ignorant of the cause, were so dreadfully alarmed as instantly to abandon their employment. "What can it be? What is the matter? What can have happened?" cried all at once. "It must be cannon. It is perhaps the captain and the ship's company who have found their way hither. Or can it be some vessel in distress? Can we go to its relief?" The boys lost not a moment in jumping into their tubs, whither I soon followed them, after having whispered a few words to my wife, somewhat tending to explain, but still more to tranquilize her mind during the trip we had now to engage in. We rowed out of the bay with more rapidity than on any former occasion. Curiosity gave strength to our arms. When the vessel was in sight, I observed with pleasure that no change had taken place in the part of her which faced Tent House, and that no sign of smoke appeared. We advanced, therefore, in excellent spirits, but instead of rowing as usual straight to the breach, we proceeded round to the side, on the inside of which we had placed the cracker. The horrible scene of devastation we had caused now broke upon our sight. The greater part of the ship's side was shattered to pieces. Innumerable splinters covered the surface of the water. The whole exhibited a scene of terrible destruction, in the midst of which presented itself our elegant pinnace, entirely free from injury. We entered by the new breach, and had soon reason to be assured that the pinnace had wholly escaped injury, and that the fire was entirely extinguished. The mortar, however, and pieces of the chain had been driven forcibly into the opposite side of the enclosure. I then examined the breach we had thus effected, and next the pinnace. I perceived that it would be easy, with the help of the crow and the lever, to lower her into the water. In putting her together, I had used the precaution of placing her keel on rollers, that we might not experience the same difficulty as we had formerly done in launching our tub raft. Before letting her go, however, I fastened the end of a long, thick rope to her head, and the other end to the most solid part of the wreck, for fear of her being carried out too far. We put our whole ingenuity and strength to this undertaking, and soon enjoyed the pleasure of seeing our pinnace descend gracefully into the sea. 2 whole days more were spent in completely equipping and loading the beautiful little barge we had now secured. When she was ready for sailing, I found it impossible to resist the earnest importunity of the boys, who, as a recompense for the industry and discretion they had employed, claimed my permission to salute their mother on their approach to Tent House with 2 discharges of cannon. These accordingly were loaded, and the 2 youngest placed themselves with a lighted match in hand close to the touch holes to be in readiness. Fritz stood at the mast to manage the ropes and cables, while I took my station at the rudder. These matters being adjusted, we put off with sensations of lively joy, which was demonstrated by loud huzzas and suitable gesticulation. Yes, kind of thing. The wind was favorable and so brisk that we glided with the rapidity of a bird along the mirror of the waters, and while my young ones were transported with pleasure by the velocity of the motion, I could not myself refrain from shuddering at the thought of some possible disaster. Our old friend the tub raft had been deeply loaded and fastened to the pinnace, and it now followed as an accompanying boat to a superior vessel. We took down our large sail as soon as we found ourselves at the entrance of Safety Bay to have the greater command in steering the pinnace, and soon the smaller ones were lowered one by one that we might the more securely avoid being thrown with violence upon the rocks so prevalent along the coast. Thus, proceeding at a slower rate, we had greater facilities for managing the important affair of the discharge of the cannon. Arrived within a certain distance, "Fire!" cried Commander Fritz. The rocks behind Tent House returned the sound. "Fire!" said Fritz again. Ernest and Jack obeyed, and the echoes again majestically replied. Fritz at the same moment had discharged his 2 pistols, and all joined instantly in 3 loud huzzas. "Welcome, welcome, dear ones," was the answer from the anxious mother, almost breathless with astonishment and joy. "Welcome," cried also little Francis with his feeble voice, as he stood clinging to her side, and not well knowing whether he was to be sad or merry. We now tried to push to shore with our oars in a particular direction, that we might have the protection of a projecting mass of rocks, and my wife and little Francis hastened to the spot to receive us. Fritz now invited his mother to get on board, and gave her his assistance. When they had all stepped upon the deck, they entreated the permission to salute by again discharging the cannon, and at the same moment to confer on the pinnace the name of their mother, the Elizabeth. Did you notice that? Their mother's name is the same as your mother's name. Right? Yeah. My wife was particularly gratified by these our late adventures. She applauded our skill and perseverance. "But," said she, "we have not, I assure you, remained idle while the rest were so actively employed for the common benefit. No, not so. Little Francis and his mother found means to be doing something also, though not at this moment prepared to furnish such unquestionable proofs as you, by your salutations of cannon, etc. But wait a little, good friends, and our proofs shall hereafter be apparent in some dishes of excellent vegetables which we shall be able to regale you with. It depends, to say the truth, wholly on yourselves, dear ones, to go with me and see what we have done." We did not hesitate to comply, and jumped briskly out of the pinnace for the purpose. Taking her little coadjutor Francis by the hand, she led the way, and we followed in the gayest mood imaginable. She conducted us up an ascent of one of our rocks, and stopping at the spot where the cascade is formed from Jackal's River, she displayed to our astonished eyes a handsome kitchen garden, laid out properly in beds and walks, and, as she told us, everywhere sowed with the seed of useful plants. "This," said she, "is the pretty exploit we have been engaged in, if you will kindly think so of it. In this spot the earth is so light, being principally composed of decayed leaves, that Francis and I had no difficulty in working in it, and then dividing it into different compartments, one for potatoes, one for manioc, and other smaller shares for lettuces of various kinds, not forgetting to leave a due proportion to receive from plants of the sugar cane. You, dear husband, and Fritz will easily find means to conduct sufficient water hither from the cascade by means of pipes of bamboo to keep the whole in health and vigor." I stood transported in the midst of so perfect an exhibition of the kind zeal and persevering industry of this most amiable of women. I could only exclaim that I should never have believed in the possibility of such a labor in so short a time, and particularly with so much privacy as to leave me wholly unsuspicious of the existence of such a project. The pinnace was anchored on the shore and fastened with a rope by her head to a stake. When all our stores were disposed of, we began our journey to Falcon's Stream, but not empty-handed. We took with us everything that seemed to be absolutely wanted for comfort, and when brought together it was really so much that both ourselves and our beasts of burden had no easy task to perform. And that is the end of chapter 20. So on Tuesday, the 18th, we will read chapter 21.
What is it called?
Chapter 21, Gymnastic Exercises, Various Discoveries, Singular Animals, etc. So have a nice Feast of the Assumption and a good Sunday.
Bye.
This has been Larry's Library.